Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Today we're going over some new polls that have come out in the last few days or so for the Virginia and New Jersey governor's races, which give a look at how this race is currently going in their respective two states, as well as a new poll in New York City as well that gives us a look at how that race is currently going. So let's get into it. In the state of Virginia, there's a new poll that's come out from the Trafalgar Insider Advantage, two Republican-aligned pollsters, and they are showing this is a two-point race between Abigail Spanberger and Winsome Earl Sears. Spanberger having 47% of the vote, Winsome Sears 45% of the vote, 1% other, and 6% undecided. Trafalgar last week also released a poll showing it a three-point race between Spanberger and Sears, 48 to 45, 6% undecided in that one. Now, how that plays overall into the average of things, Real Clear Politics has Spanberger up 6.5%, over Winsome Sears 50.3 to 43.8, with around 6 points still undecided. For the Decision Desk HQ, they have Spanberger leading by 4.5% at 49.2 to 44.7 for Sears. Race to the White House has Spanberger at 51 and Sears at 43 with an 8-point lead. Overall, an average of a 6.4% lead for Spanberger over Sears in the average for Virginia. Now, this is very interesting. Both of these, which are two Republican-aligned pollsters, some of them being close allies of President Trump as well, being very notable. Now, in past videos, I've mentioned the rule I usually use is for an internal or partisan poll, I shift it 5 points in the opposite direction, meaning this 2-point Democratic lead, using that rule, would be around a 7-point Democratic lead on average for Spanberger over Sears. And if that is the case, that pretty much lines up exactly with where the polling average currently is. Though it is worth noting that even though this race right now certainly looks like Abigail Spanberger is going to win, the race has narrowed up in the last month or so. If you go back to the summertime in July and August, you would see numbers where Spanberger would be up about 9 points, for instance, from Virginia Commonwealth. SoCal Strategies, a 12-point lead. Signal was an 8-point lead back in September, 12 points for Christopher Newport University. You see these numbers are starting to narrow up a little bit. Mainly it's been on Winsome Sears' side. Starting off, she would be getting around the high 30s to low 40s, 40%, 41% in most of these polls. Now Sears is getting, in these two polls, 45%. Still, though, and the average around 43, 44, 45% or so is not going to be near enough when Spanberger's polling near the 48, 49, 50% range or so on the low end of these polls, where in most of them she's getting around 49 to 50% or higher. Just to give you an idea, we can also look back at the 2017 race in Virginia and its governor election, where the polling was actually a lot tighter. Ralph Northam led at Gillespie by about 3.3%, 47.7 to 44.4 for Northam over Gillespie in the final polling averages. Now, in this one, we saw some polling from the Republican Trafalgar group, which showed it a 1-point race, 49 to 48 from October 31st to November 2nd. So they had this race being only 1 point. Now, ultimately, pretty much everything broke well for Ralph Northam. He ended up getting 53.9%, won over a lot of undecided voters. Ed Gillespie only ended up getting about 45% of the vote, which when you look at it was right around where he was polling, 44.4%. He went up about 0.6% when everything was said and done. Now, for 2021, we can look at Virginia. Trafalgar in its final poll, however, was a little bit more accurate, though. They had Glenn Youngkin leading over Terry McAuliffe, 49 to 47, a 2-point margin. Insider Advantage, 47-45, a 2-point margin. And the final results for these ones were actually exactly pretty much 2 points, 50.58 to 48.64. So these two pollsters are going to be very interesting to watch for this governor's race in 2025, because in 2017, they were certainly off in terms of being more Republican-friendly than the race ended up being. But in the Republican year of 2021, where Glenn Youngkin won the race, they were pretty much spot on. So for right now, I think it's more likely that they're the outlier polls and Abigail Spanberger is winning by more than 2 or 3% in this race. But when everything is said and done, if this race does end up being a lot closer, we'll likely be looking at these two pollsters and saying, okay, what did they know or what did we miss? But I think for right now, more likely than not, these polls are outliers, and Abigail Spanberger is still commanding a lead in this race at a bare minimum of 5 to 6% at this current point in time. But these are two new polls to talk about for this race. Now for New Jersey, we have a new poll from Beacon Research, the Democratic pollster, and Shaw and Company Research, a Republican pollster, and this is the pollster that is affiliated and sponsored by the news station Fox News. Now, they show relatively similar findings to what the rest of the averages are showing, which is in the New Jersey governor's race, Mikey Sherrill, the Democrat, has 50% of the vote to Jack Ciattarelli's 45% among likely voters, with 5% undecided. Now, among registered voters, a larger sample size, Mikey Sherrill is leading over Ciattarelli 48 to 44, with 8% undecided in that one. Now, this is pretty interesting because, of course, when you hear Fox News, you're going to think, okay, well, it's Fox News, so probably Republican numbers, but it's actually a lot more balanced than that. When you look at the Democratic and Republican pollsters essentially canceling each other out, they're usually one of the more accurate pollsters when everything is said and done. And they're showing the Democrat leading by about 5 points among likely voters. And when you look at the polling averages, that's right around where it is. Real Clear Politics has Sherrill leading over Ciattarelli by 3.5%, 47.2 to 43.7, with 9 points or so still undecided. However, Decision Desk HQ pretty much aligns with these numbers exactly. 49.1 for Sherrill, 44.2 for Ciattarelli, 6.7% undecided, leading about a 5-point lead for Sherrill in that one. And then Race to the White House is also a 4.5-point lead, on average a 4.3% lead for Sherrill over Ciattarelli. This race in New Jersey is very fascinating because last time around back in 2021, even though it was a more of a Republican year, not many people were expecting Phil Murphy versus Jack Ciattarelli to end up being super close. Real Clear Politics ended up with Murphy getting 50.5%, Ciattarelli 42.7%, 7.8% lead. You can also see, there were some polls done, but there weren't as much as being done now. And you see some of the familiar names, though. In the state of New Jersey, you saw Emerson College, a 6-point lead for Murphy over Ciattarelli. Monmouth University, which is no longer, their polling institute's no longer in business for this cycle, but they had Phil Murphy up 50 to 39. Rutgers Eagleton, an 8-point lead. Trafalgar, which we just talked about, or the Trafalgar as well, 49 to 45, a 4-point lead in this race. So they showed up being more on the closer side, but that was still a 4-point race or so. Now, the ultimate results were things got very close. Phil Murphy ended up winning 51.22%. Jack Ciattarelli got up to 48%. Now, when you see the polling here, still 6.8%, there was a large gap out there, and a lot of those others or undecided voters ended up pretty much all breaking for Jack Ciattarelli. If you want to do the math, about 0.7% of them broke for Phil Murphy, and the rest, roughly 6.1%, all pretty much broke for Jack Ciattarelli. So now the question is going to be, as we're looking at 2025, well, what happens here? Because in this one, unlike in 2021, Mikey Sherrill, the Democrat, is not polling at 50% of the vote yet. She's polling under 50% of the vote. Jack Ciattarelli is polling right around a similar number. He's about a point higher on the averages. He's around 43.9%, roughly 1.2% higher. But Ciattarelli's finding himself in a very similar situation to 2021, where for Ciattarelli to win this race, he's going to need a lot of the undecided voters to ultimately all break his way. Now, according to the Fox News poll, for likely voters at 50 to 45, that essentially means Ciattarelli's pathway to winning there really isn't there if Sherrill's already reaching 50%. This is also, we're starting to see Sherrill right around 50, 48 in the last poll Fox News did, and we're looking around public policy polling around 49%. We're starting to see Sherrill get close to that 50% number and starting to reach it in some polling. But the numbers overall show Ciattarelli still has a path in the averages that are currently left out there. But certainly what those undecided do, those 8% or so that are undecided, will decide this race. Though similarly to 2021, it looks like Mikey Sherrill has more of a chance of winning the race than Jack Ciattarelli does, given the fact that a lot of those undecided voters are in the state of New Jersey, and they'll probably be voting more Democratic than, say, in a battleground state like maybe North Carolina or Wisconsin even. New Jersey's had a long history of voting blue. It did vote for Kamala Harris by 6 points, which was a 10-point shift towards President Trump and the Republicans in 2024, but it still did ultimately vote for the Democratic vice president at the time by roughly 6 points. So in an off-year election, which usually favors the opposite party, a lot of those undecided voters still may ultimately vote for the Democrat instead of voting for the Trump-endorsed Republican. But if enough of them do decide to vote for Jack Ciattarelli, though, and saying they want change, especially from the Democratic governor, Phil Murphy, then there is enough mathematical support for Ciattarelli to win this race. But it's going to be a very, very tight race when everything is said and done, due to the fact that Mikey Sherrill's already getting 48% in most of these polls. So Ciattarelli's going to win. It'll probably be an exact, almost replica of what 2021 ended up being, where essentially it ended up being a 51 to 48 type of race. If Chitterelli wins, or maybe even if Mikey Sherrill wins, it may almost be a repeat of what 2021 ended up being. So that's the newest poll, the Fox News poll in New Jersey. Now we can also just look really briefly at New York City as well, because this one's a little bit more defined. That same Fox News poll did a new poll in New York City, but this one shows a much more clear answer on this one, which is that Zohran Mamdani, the Democrat, has 49% of the vote. Andrew Cuomo is 28%, and Curtis Lewa has 13%. Now, Eric Adams, when the time they polled, was still in the race, but he only got 3% of the vote, and he is no longer in the race. So really no need to talk about him and what percent he'll be getting so much. The fact is, we've been talking about this for weeks and months now, and it seems just 100% consistent. Zohran Mamdani, like what we've been saying with Spanberger and Sherrill, is nearing that 50% number. He's at 47.37 across the averages in New York City. However, in this one, it's not just Mamdani versus one candidate. It's Zohran Mamdani versus Andrew Cuomo and versus Curtis Lewa, who themselves are splitting the 53% or so of voters or support that is not currently consolidated behind Mamdani. And just do the math. Two people splitting that percent, roughly 9.6%, around 10% of the vote, is still undecided at this current point in time. One of Cuomo or Sliwa would literally need to win every single undecided voter that is left out there, and it still would not mathematically be enough to catch the support that Zohran Mamdani has. Not with both Cuomo and Sliwa in the race. And both of them have been adamant they are staying in this race. Neither is going to drop out. And even if if one of them did drop out, more likely than not, Cuomo would have the better chance than Curtis Lewa would based on the polling. But even then, depending on the poll you look at in the head-to-head matchup, Mamdani would still lead over Andrew Cuomo. Emerson's last poll from back in September showed Mamdani leading over Cuomo by 7%, with 13% undecided, showing that Andrew Cuomo still has significant popularity issues after the scandals that ultimately resulted in him not only resigning his governorship, but also losing in the Democratic primary to Zohran Mamdani. A lot of New York voters do not want to see Andrew Cuomo be the next mayor of New York City. So right now, it looks like this is a race that Zohran Mamdani is leading by over 15 points in the safe Democratic margin, and this latest poll from Fox News really just doubles down and confirms that Zohran Mamdani is going to be the next mayor of New York City, and whether Cuomo or Sliwa, if one of them drops out and endorses the other, even at this point, I think it would be too late, because even with the consolidated support, Mamdani would still have a lead in the race, and the undecided voters may break for Mamdani anyway. And this poll from Fox News really just confirms that. So that's the poll for New York City and how everything's looking on that front. Just to give quick little prediction thoughts on this one, because obviously prediction video, we're going to want to see this. Let's find the 2025. Here it is, 2025 map here. For the governor's races right now, not really too much has changed here. Virginia, I still think, is a likely Democratic win. This is going to be over 5 points, but under 15 points. I do think it's narrowed up a little bit. I do still have it right around that 8-point Democratic win. It may exceed that, going a little bit higher into the 9-10 point range. I think that may have passed a little bit, though. I think we're going to see Spanberger win by around 8% as of right now. New Jersey is certainly narrowing up. I do still have Democrat Mikey Sherrill nearly favored in this race in the lean Democratic category. This is going to be within a 1 and a 5 point Democratic win. Right now I have it around 4 to 4.5%, right around with the polling, but this is getting very, very close in New Jersey. And certainly the last 2 weeks in this election are going to be crucial for who ultimately wins this race in New Jersey. So likely Democrat in Virginia, around 8 points. Lean Democrat in New Jersey, around 4 points. And as for New York City, not really a surprise here. Safe Democratic win for Zohran Mamdani over Andrew Cuomo and Curtis Lewa in that one. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like and subscribe if you did. Please stay tuned because I have some very exciting videos planned for the next 2 weeks or so leading up to Election Day that you're not going to want to miss out on. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you in a future video.